On The Market is back. I'm Tina Cortez, and this is York Region's only radio real estate show. Over to my co-host, Asif Khan from Remax Prime Properties with today's guest. Asif.
Thank you, Tina. Joining us is Naresh Vyas, Vice President of Business Development from Deposit Rocket. Deposit Rocket has been taking the industry by storm. Naresh, tell our listeners what Deposit Rocket is.
Thank you, Asif. Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. So, Deposit Rocket is a new real estate innovation. It helps buyers with an instant deposit for their home purchase. And it provides an A-rated security to sellers that's as secure as a certified check or a banker's draft. And what we do is we leverage the equity in the buyer's home, and we don't lend money, so we do this without loans or any cash advances. And it's actually more cost-effective than credit lines or bridge finance.
So, Naresh, could you walk us through how exactly does it work? Is this a legal way to submit a deposit?
Yes, great question. So I'm going to answer that question in two parts. The first part, how does it work? So Deposit Rocket is a irrevocable, callable, cashable guarantee that's A-rated in the form of a bond. And the bond says that the buyer will pay the deposit on closing, and it's in lieu of a certified check or a banker's draft. And it's issued by a company called Northbridge Insurance Company, which is one of the largest insurers in not just Canada, but also North America, that's USA. And it's owned by a company called Fairfax Financial, which is a mega financial company. So it's an A-rated security. It's very, very secure. And is it legal? Well, yes, of course it's legal, because if it wasn't, we wouldn't be able to do this. We've spent over a year to make sure that we apply all the rules and regulations of real estate home buying, and we definitely have to be compliant with the regulators like RICO and the other regulators across Canada. So for sure, we're definitely legal. And we do apply all the regulations that we have to. In fact, the regulators have actually given us a lot of positive feedback, because one of the main objectives of Deposit Rocket is to protect the consumers and the buyers and keep their cash safe. So that's one of the main goals.
Now, traditionally, Naresh, we see people use certified checks and bank drafts. How is Deposit Rocket different or similar to those?
That's a great question, Asa. Thank you. The difference here is that instead of a buyer scrambling around for higher and higher deposits of cash, we help them instantly by providing a deposit in lieu of a certified check or a bank draft, and they simply pay the deposit along with the balance of the down payment when they close the property. And as most buyers are rich and cash poor, this works out great for them.
And how does this benefit Canadian home buyers?
Okay, so there's a number of reasons how this benefits the home buyers. And basically, very, very quickly, it's a 5-minute application. It's online, and if they've got the equity or they've got other forms of qualification, we'll get into that later. They get approved very quickly. So the buyer doesn't now have to go to the bank. They don't have to do any negotiations for credit lines. They don't have to stress about borrowing money from friends and family. As I mentioned, no credit lines, no bridge loans. They don't have to liquidate any investments and suffer breakage fees. They can continue actually earning interest until the closing. And because we don't do any credit checks or liens on the properties, it actually benefits them because we try and keep their credit file clean. And finally, the most important thing is that if they're unsuccessful with the first offer, they don't have to rush back to the bank and get a new check sheet for the next offer. They can use this as many times as they want at no extra charge until they actually are successful in the offer of buying a home.
So this is going to be based off someone's home equity, but Naresh, what if the buyer does not own a home right now?
So if the buyer doesn't have a home at the moment, we have other ways of approving the buyers. So the qualifications for getting the credit is very simple. They have either home equity. We can actually use a mortgage approval letter. So if a mortgage professional has actually done the financial application for mortgages. They've done the due diligence. We're able to approve our clients or buyers if they have a mortgage approved already. If they have cash locked up in investments such as Teslas, mutual funds, or locked-in investments, we're happy to use those. And, of course, the standby bank of mom and dad. We can actually leverage a gift from a parent, and we're able to issue a deposit rocket by having the parent also co-sign the guarantees.
Can Deposit Rocket be used by an existing homeowner to purchase an investment property, perhaps?
Yes. That's an interesting question. I say that because the rules of having Deposit Rocket guarantee is only for owner-occupied property. So we can use investment properties if they were a second home, such as a cottage, or a second family home where maybe the son or the daughter or the family of the children are staying. And we're more than happy to accept mortgage helpers, so they could rent out the basement, for example. In short, to answer that question, we would actually need to look at the application, and it would be on a case-by-case basis. Does that clarify that point?
It does. Thank you.
Okay.
Now, let's turn the tables, Naresh. I'm the seller. I'm being presented with a Deposit Rocket guarantee rather than a tangible check or bank draft that I can touch and feel, and I know what it's all about. Why is Deposit Rocket safer for me as the seller?
Great question. Okay, let's look at the facts as they are. York Region home prices have shot up, and deposits required now have become very, very huge. You're in the business, and you face this every single day. For a seller, they want something that's going to be secure. It's going to be a binding contract, and how deposit helps is, one, we're as secure as a certified check because a bank draft or a certified check issued by a bank is an A-rated security, and we have an A-rated security in the form of a deposit rocket. So for a seller, they're looking at three things. One, we have to follow the same rules that the real estate brokers have to follow. So as far as legality and security is concerned, we're basically in the same boat as them. For a buyer default or a buyer remorse, we actually provide more security. Let me give you an example. When a deposit rocket is issued, it's issued by the buyer, or it's issued on behalf of the buyer for the seller. And there is no going back. It's an irrevocable, callable guarantee. That means that if the buyer changes their mind, the seller would still have the security of having that deposit. And if they've accepted the offer and it's been signed back and firmed up, then that is a legal obligation. So if there's any buyer defaults, Deposit Rocket will cover that deposit. The other thing for a buyer, and this is happening more and more frequently, and I'm sure you've heard of this as well, there are a number of fraudulent certified checks and bank drafts that are floating about, as well as fraudulent bank transfers. And in that case, if there's such a fraudulent type of deposit, then we're definitely a lot more secure for the seller than a fraudulent bank transfer.
Okay, so staying along those lines, if that deal goes south prior to closing, who gets the money?
If the deal goes south prior to closing, then we would have to wait for the closing. The deposit holder, that would be the listing broker in Ontario. It's different in BC, but the listing broker will take directions from the seller, and we take 100% direction from the listing broker. They are the deposit holders, so we have to take the directions from them. They have total control of the deposit rocket, and the options for the sellers are, one, a mutual or partial consent. So they would actually sign a waiver to let the buyer off the hook if, there's a death in the family or something happens, which is, a tragic situation. They would be able to have mutual or partial consent. But in case of default, the responsibility is still on the buyer to perform their part of the deal, which is to follow through. And if they don't, then Deposit Rocket will step in we would step in and have the same rules that apply to a certified check that is placed in a trust account. So the listing broker would provide us with the documentation, and once the paperwork has been filed by the claim, we make a payment in 3 days. Normally the payment's made in 2 days, but we just take 3 days to give us an extra day.
What are the fees for buyers and sellers before we let you go? And then where can people find more information about this?
Great question. Okay, so as I mentioned to you, it's a very quick online process. Let me give you a quick example. Now, York Region being very, very sort of, I wouldn't say it's the most high-end, but as if you know, the prices here are going up very, very fast. So the average deposit for $1 million property would be, let's say, $50,000. That's 5%. And the average time period for a deal would be normally 90 days. That's 3 months. So for a 3-month, $50,000 deposit, the actual premium is only $900. So when we say it's cost-effective, it really is cost-effective. So a $900 for the premium. There is a $150 policy fee and a $12 tax. So we're looking at just over $1,000. We're looking at about $1,062 to be exact. And that gives the buyer a $50,000 deposit for 3 months. Now, if they're unsuccessful, they can use that deposit rocket by simply changing the address and the listing broker as many times as they need to find a successful deal at no extra cost.
That's awesome, Naresh. You know what? It really is. If you think about it, for $1,000 and you don't have to touch your equity or your cash or affect your cash flow, Deposit Rocket's going to be a blast if we can think of that. Thank you for joining us. If people want more information, where can they find it?
Well, let me first thank you both for having me on the show, and it's great because the listeners, I'm sure, will be very interested in this. They can check more information on our website, www.depositrocket.ca, and there's a chatbot. They can leave messages for me or one of my team. Someone will always call them back very, very quickly, and hopefully answer any questions that they may have.
Thanks, Naresh.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
When we come back, your questions and the hot listing. This is On the Market on 105.9 The Region. Stay with us.